Hello and welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Bryan C.P. Steele and I will be your nerd today and any other day that you watch one of my silly little shows. Hi everybody. Let's go through the week in Bryan. Then I've got a special treat for you this episode. Where we will get to talk to a very old friend of mine, a former employer, a very good friend, and a co-creator, designer, awesome general game mogul, Christopher Loizou, with Serious Business Games, and it's going to be awesome. So we'll get to that in a minute. But the week in Bryan. So let's start I'm gonna do the downer stuff first. Personal life. I know that sounds like downer stuff. What, Bryan? You're normally so positive. I had a friend pass away this last week. Robin, better known as the Black and White Guy. He is a pencil artist that is actually from here in Indiana. I want to tell a little story to kind of say how we became friends. He was actually much closer with my wife than myself. We were still friends, but they have history. Way back, our first Christmas as a married couple, Natalie got me, or no, it wasn't Christmas. It was first anniversary, because first anniversary is paper. She got me paper tickets, paper invite to go meet Stephen Amell, who, if you actually look right here, that bow, that recurve bow right there, is signed by him. Stephen Amell played the Green Arrow on the CW series Arrow and Flash and all that stuff. Started a whole, CW cinematic universe. And that show, I'm going to sound really kind of melodramatic, that show and The Flash and everything, it was a big deal to me. Not only am I a massive DC fan, but it came into its own at the time when I needed some good, solid, awesome, creative distraction. And it helped shape a lot of me and my son's young, when he was really young, between that and like Teen Titans Go and just generally, all the hangout time that we had and whatnot. It really did, watching the Arrow and watching the Flash every week was like some of our bonding stuff. And so it was, that was a big deal to me. And for our first anniversary, Natalie got me tickets to go to a wine party, to a convention, to go meet with, VIP access to go meet and greet and have wine with Stephen Amell. During that show, had a blast. It was amazing. I love convention life anyway, and I've done horror conventions for years and years and years. Gaming conventions, obviously, for a variety of reasons. But it was the first time that I had gone to a Walking Dead / Arrowverse, the fan fest, and we had a blast. We had so much fun. And on the flight home, the people sitting in front of us, we were talking about something, and maybe we were talking too loud. I don't know exactly what it was, but this wonderful gentleman turned around and basically was like, "Oh, you guys are from Indiana as well," and we started talking back and forth. And it turns out that not only was this gentleman Robin, not only was this gentleman from Indiana, but he was also an artist, just like Natalie. He was a charcoal artist, or charcoal / pencils, just like Natalie. He had this booth at the show, and Natalie pulled out her portfolio book to show him, because Natalie has done a ton of. She's amazing. Her links are in my description. But she's done a bunch of personal work for a lot of stars, and she started showing Robin some of her stuff, and Robin was like, "You need to have a booth at the next show, at the next fan fest that's close by. You need to have a booth." And he was the impetus, the kind of the hot poker that got her to start Artemis Portraits. He's the reason why we know people like Kirk Acevedo, and the reason why why a personal piece of Natalie's art is hanging in Manu Bennett's hallway of him and his kids. Like we owe so much to him, to his just good-natured. There are certain industries where things can get a little cutthroat, and unfortunately, art sometimes can be that way. We're not going to get into the AI discussion, but the fact that his art style was so similar to Natalie's, and he was not only okay with being like, hey, yeah, you should come to these shows, it was, please have a booth. Please sell your stuff. Please let me introduce you to these cool people. Let's take you out to dinner so we can go have dinner with Jenna Elfman and Kari Payton. And these were, it was all based off of how awesome and just how unbelievably open and how much of just a genuinely good guy Robin was. Sometime last year, or maybe the year before, but I want to say it was last year, he collapsed at a show, and they took him off to the hospital. Obviously, he's a little older than we are, and they found out that he had a brain tumor, and went through all of the processes that you have to go through, all the chemo and everything, and they were pretty sure he was in the clear. And a few months back, things started looking a little squirrely again, and they had to take a look and stuff, and they found a second larger tumor, and he fought it, and unfortunately last week he lost that fight, and it was rough news to get. It was not ideal, obviously. And because Natalie doesn't spend as much time online that I do, I had to go give her that news, which obviously was it kind of meant for a pretty rough afternoon. But his funeral was this week, and it's just I like to be as honest with you guys as possible, and there's been a lot of rough and tumble negativity out in the world right now, and that was that was hard. That was hard to hear. I mean, and again, Robin and I we weren't like close, but we talked online. We saw each other at shows, but he held such a particular place in getting Natalie to where she is. Our local printer for her prints, we only know about them because they're in this like little small town in southern Indiana. We only know about them because that's the one that Robin used. It was just there are moments in life that you are reminded what really is important. So whatever you're doing, if you are by a loved one, if you're by one of your friends, hell, even if you're not, pause this video and send somebody you send somebody you love, somebody you are friends with, maybe somebody who you just really appreciate, and just do me a favor and pause this and just send them a message that just lets them know that they're important and that they matter, and that maybe that you miss them, or anything like that, because I think that that's really important. All right. The rest of personal life has been fine. Going back to the gym, feeling good, nobody's sick, everything's wonderful. as far as that goes. Painting and hobby. Let's move on to other cool, great news. Painting-wise, I haven't done a damn thing. I've been way too busy. But I will say that I have apparently an eyelash in my eyeball. I'm getting a camera, and the weirdest things happen. Happy Valentine's Day / belated Christmas to me. My lovely wife finished the process of replacing my 3D printer with an actually even better model than the last one. So a slight upgrade, and I am back in business. I have no resin currently. I'm almost out of resin, but I'm back in business. I'm back in getting creative things printed, and for a very special someone who might be watching this video, who had sent me a bunch of professional STLs to print with my last printer as the final commission that I only got halfway through before the printer died. I'm almost done with your stuff, and I will soon have these things to you, only like a million months later. Apologies for the technical difficulties that got us here. Gaming wise, so I was supposed to play our Rifts game last week. That ended up getting canceled because we found out about Robin's passing, and it kind of put us in a place where I wasn't really feeling like I wanted to do anything other than maybe cuddle on the couch with my wife and a dog and watch some British TV, just really kind of turn my brain off for a bit. Other than that, I haven't really done much gaming. Not even like my own role playing or playtesting. I did get a playtest in of a short adventure, kind of test adventure that I'm running at Gamma for some select audiences. And that worked out. I had no fear that was going to be a problem, because it's literally an hour long. Everybody meet, hey, here's some skill checks, here's a combat, let's go home. Just to kind of show people some of the stuff that Evil Genius is going to be putting together, later this year. So that went well. I did start to arrange for a really cool Wave 2 playtest of some Warzone Eternal stuff, and the person I was to play fell through, so that didn't happen. But playtesting for Wave 2 has officially begun in earnest outside of the office, and so far so good. A couple of people have raised some valid questions, but for the most part, things are behaving the way that Alex and I designed them to. So, pretty excited there. And then work. Work. So last week I was focusing very heavily on picking up the pieces of a lot of projects that kind of fell when a bunch of people left the company all at once. So my Evil Genius stuff has been a lot of, hey, let's get this done. Hey, let's get this done. But I gotta say, probably of all of the things that I am the most proud of right now out of the Evil Genius side of work, is the art for the Cryptid Codex and the cover art for the Jaeger Codex and Dominion of Iron are both looking very sharp. We've got a bunch of that stuff off to Legendary for them to give their final seal of approval, which they do. They're part of this process. So I'm really excited to see, as we start pushing that stuff forward so we can get that, out the door. It does look like it's probably going to be a little bit later than we originally intended, but as people can probably figure out, last year did not, the last half of last year did not end like we thought it was going to, as a company. and it put some hiccups in the some wrinkles in the works, so to speak. So yeah, about that. We are still, on track. We're still pushing forward. We're still making forward progression, but with a lowered amount of staff and with an extra step in the process of having to go through Legendary, make sure everything is cool before we actually move on to the next stage. It has taken more time than we anticipated. So it's disappointing, but I know the final product is going to be awesome. So I'm totally confident there. Surviving Strange Hollow still progresses, still getting some words down on that, and setting up some pretty cool stuff as far as like media presence, and found out about something that's going to be part of the Kickstarter that is, I don't know if it's the first of its kind, but I definitely know that I have not seen, I can't recall any Kickstarters doing this. And if they did, they didn't do it openly. So I can't wait to hopefully, be able to fly that flag. But so that is right around the corner. That's like just over 2 weeks away for when that launches. Which you can follow the link in the description and become, basically tag the hey, remind me to come be part of that. Because you're going to want to. There's a bunch of really cool stuff right out of the gate on that that Kickstarter. The Shadowrun novel, I have been putting a ton of words down on that. I have been reinvigorated. In fact, actually, when this comes out, it will have been in the past, but when I'm recording this later today, I have a really cool meeting set up with the head of their fiction department to talk to them, to talk to John about this current project and the next one. So it is very exciting to start. I mentioned before in the novel writing process that sometimes you get into the doldrums of, I'm between plot points. I need to get to this other cool thing that I want to get to. I have rounded that gap, and I know the next 20,000 words in this book are going to be action-packed and filled with awesome moments that I've had sitting in the wings waiting to use. So I'm very, very excited to get that pushed together. And then I think that's about it. I did talk to somebody about a little side gig later, closer to the summer. It's not huge, but it sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun as long as everything gels together. And it also sounds like I'm going to be doing a couple of live plays myself. That I'll be part of a few live plays in March. That I'll obviously tell you guys more about when I have dates and times and things. But I know that I had to buy a costume prop for one of them. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much the week in Bryan. I know that sounds like a lot, and I know we started kind of on a bummer, and but it's been a pretty good week. And then next week, I think I have if my contact with one of my sponsors has said that everything's coming through, I'm pretty sure I might have something very, very cool to actually show you next week. If not, we'll figure out something cool to do. But yes, so I think we can move on to the meat of this episode, which brings us to an interview with Christopher Loizou, the head CEO, creator, head honcho, El Jefe, Big G's, whatever you want to call him, over at Serious Business Games. That he started a role-playing game 20 some odd years ago. We actually talk about that in the interview. I recorded it earlier. We talked about it a little bit earlier. I've known Chris since basically the summer after we released War Machine Prime with Privateer Press. So 2003, I met Chris at an Origins, I believe the afternoon before we won the Origins Awards for War Machine Prime. But I met him, I played his game, I had a blast with his game, and it was this really, really cool, completely its own system called, at the time, it was called Crimson Empire. But it became Cursed Empire when his book sales started going out of, kind of out of the indie niche market, and someone was like, oh, hey, by the way, that's the name of a Star Wars book. And so that became an issue. So he changed the name, and it has been Cursed Empire ever since. And since then, he's hung on to the game. The world of Thargos has gotten bigger. There are board games and miniature game and card games. One card game that I actually designed the engine for, and like he's done a lot with this world, and he's on the precipice of doing another bigger, better, badder version that he's doing Cursed Empire 3rd Edition. And I wanted to get him on the show because not only does that world setting have a place in my heart because I helped build parts of that world, but it is also just a really, really cool product. And I wanted, and he was talking up the 3rd edition, the change from 2nd edition to 3rd edition so much that I was like, you know what, let's get you on camera and get you talking about all of the awesome things that SPG is doing. So we did that, and we actually talked for quite a bit before the camera started rolling because again, old friends. But I hope that we actually covered enough stuff that you guys get a good grasp of things. And if you are a role-playing fan, hell, if you're a board game fan or a card game fan, if you're just a fan of kind of gritty, cool fantasy, definitely you're going to want to check this guy's stuff out. It's some very, very rad stuff. And then so after the interview, you'll see me again. I'll look just like this because I got to record that too. But so without further ado, Christopher Loizou with Serious Business Games. Hello, everyone. I know you just talked to me, but now you get to meet with my old-time friend. Do you want to go as Christopher, or should I say Chris?
Chris is cool.
Chris Loizou of I literally just SBG Editions. Was it Serious
Business Games?
Serious Business Games, and we go back a very long time. Actually, right before I hit the recording button on this, we were talking about the time frame here. And for the people who have listened to me prattle on about this, that, and the other thing, literally the summer that we won those first Origins Awards for Privateer Press's War Machine Prime was the summer that I met Chris. Me and a bunch of my friends sat down we were walking past this cool table that had this neat banner, this very cool, like Gothic, very like just Gothic art. And we walked by and there was a couple of empty seats, and the person running the table said, you want to, I think his name was Ian, maybe?
It may have been Duncan or Kevin, probably.
I remember it ends with an N, so that doesn't help me. But someone flagged us down. I was like, "Hey, you want to sit in and have a good time?" And we sat in and we had a blast. It was the first time that we had really kind of seen this world ever, and definitely we hadn't seen the system before. We were seasoned role players, but we hadn't actually gotten into this before. And we had an absolute blast, and it ended up being the Cursed Empire 2nd Edition, which at the time several of the books actually still had a different name. There were some titling issues,
very collectible,
but it was awesome, and we had just a ton of fun. And the guy running the event said, if you're interested in the books and everything, you should go, take a look at the stock. And we got there, and I met Chris, and we hit it off. And as time moved on, I got to help a little bit with helping shape some of the Thargos world and write some narrative. I even did a little bit of design stuff back in the day.
Yes,
and it has always been a great something that's graced the bookshelf, and it's always been around. And it thankfully is coming back and coming back strong and hard with a new third edition. And thankfully, SBG is also doing a bunch of other cool stuff too. But before we get into any of that, I want to give Chris the floor because I want to get a little information about him, the background, and where all this, who you are and where you came from. Because some of these people, some of my fans are younger than our audience, or younger than our relationship. So we should give you the floor and let you talk about. Just tell the people what's up.
That's cool. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I mean, like many people, I started in 1981. That really showed my age. The little red box, the old D&D starter set, and then played a bunch of role-playing games back then. A lot of the old Chaosium system, Call of Cthulhu, RuneQuest, Hawkmoon, Stormbringer, a bunch of that stuff. Middle-earth role-playing, Rollmaster, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, a lot of those classics. I went through all those. Paranoia, Traveller, Star Wars, West End Games Edition, etc. So a bunch of stuff. And I kind of came full circle, trying out all these different games, and mainly GMing. So I was mainly GMing those games. I didn't get to play so much. I really enjoyed the whole designing scenario side of things and getting people caught up in all sorts of mess, and a lot of fun. But basically, kind of Cursed Empire started out. It was kind of born out of frustration to begin with, because I ran a D&D campaign, second edition. That's as far as I went in D&D. And the character party I had really grew in strength tremendously over multiple years, to the point that they were just keen in kind of working their way through the monster manual. They used to drive me absolutely crazy as GM. I spent hours crafting these really interesting intrigue scenarios and character interactions and backstory, and all they were interested in hitting stuff really hard and chucking a bunch of dice. So we didn't fall out, not at all, but I was getting frustrated as a GM. And I came across it was a Dragon magazine. I remember very well. I don't remember which number it was. I still have it somewhere. And something along the lines of give your monsters their bite back or their teeth back or something. And basically the recommendation they had was, convert all the D6 of the hit die of the monsters into D10s, but not roll them. Well, you're supposed to roll them. I actually just maximized. I multiplied all the hit die by 10. So suddenly my overnight, my gaming group didn't know what the heck was happening, and all these monsters became really, really brutal. And it kind of came from there when I thought, wait a minute, that reminds me of the good old days where with starting out characters in role-playing games right in the beginning, when you have kind of low-level characters or weak characters, you fear the slightest encounter. And I thought we'd actually lost that. We lost our way. So that really kind of made me think about, how do I create a game and a setting that draws from those first experiences we had of the excitement, the thrill, the kind of fear factor, the tension, and that's really where Cursed Empire came from. So at the same time, I also have a passion for ancient history. There's a bunch of stuff in the background here.
As you can tell by all the cool collectible stuff.
Some stuff here. This is a little sample here, much the joy of my wife, Karen. But basically, it's an interesting one because I've always been passionate since a very young age in ancient history, whether it's ancient Greek history, Egyptian, Roman, Alexander the Great, the Spartans, and so on. It's really inspired me. A lot of those historical events and the intrigue, the political shenanigans that go on, the military history as well. And I wanted to kind of combine those notions of ancient, mythologies, different struggling kingdoms and civilizations, and trade, big on trade as well, because I always find that if you add other dimensions to a setting, like trade, the economic dimension, economics, the flow of goods and materials, and it just adds another dimension to a setting and just a lot more richness, bringing in the powerful merchants and fleets and so on, and so on. And trade is a big part of it, of the setting. But basically, as I moved on, it kind of came to a point where creatures got their own back. They were terrifying again. And that then developed the whole idea of storytelling, bards, legends. And then from that flowed a bunch of other mechanics like Renown, which were a big part of the game. So it was kind of a reboot. It was born out of frustration, taking all the really cool stuff, all those really, really good games in my early kind of gaming years, plus a passion for ancient history. And these two things are going to clash together as a kind of big bang moment, and all kind of came together. And that's where kind of Thargos and the Cursed Empire setting came from. And I wanted to I really like the notion of flawed characters, flawed heroes. It's interesting. I was speaking to some friends recently. I said, "You come on, if you had to summarize Cursed Empire in a few words, what's the biggest strength of the game in one sentence? Not even an elevator pitch. I'm talking about the first story on the elevator. Not even a full elevator pitch." They said, "Chris, it's player dilemmas. Is the biggest thing in your game. It's a dilemma. It's the tough decisions you have to make. It's the repercussion of the decisions. It's the outcomes. That's what they really like about the game." So yeah, that's just a little intro in a few words, but that's where it kind of came from.
I can absolutely attest to that. The setting itself is very risk versus reward. There's a lot of things that every character, every narrative arc, they've gone there. They've chosen to do something and they're dealing with the fallout from it. Or they've chosen not to do something and they're dealing with the fallout from that. I completely. Your friend was dead on. It is. At the heart of any good adventure story, there are always forks on the road. There's always, I could do this, I could do that. Sometimes it's got multiple choices, but it's always. Yes, sometimes the moral compass points you a certain way and says this is the way, but a good story will say this is the way, but there's always that
Absolutely.
And that the Cursed Empire has always been that way. But when we were playing that original version, the version that we played at Origins, it was I could play this super decked out Imperial Knight style character, and I'm gonna have all of these great assets and this awesome armor and a cool sword and all that stuff, but it comes with some of that social repercussion, and it comes with the fact that you are a walking bannerman. You are a representation, you're a personification of the system.
Absolutely.
And then there are the Darkoon, which I will forever. That is still one of my favorite role playing game source books. Is the second edition Darkoon source book. It's so for the people who haven't had a chance to research that, the Darkoon are a kind of a subsect well, you know what? I'll let you put it in your words. I don't want to just.
I was actually enjoying listening to you for once, but I can't.
Well, okay, so I'll pontificate. So they're various cults or named as such they're basically groups of like-minded. I don't want to call them freedom fighters. That's not the right word. Some of them could be, but they're
some of them. Yeah.
What's up?
They think they are.
Yeah, they definitely believe they're on that side of the coin. But people who have given themselves fully and bodily and mentally, completely over to an ideal, and sometimes that ideal is pretty messed up. And there's a lot of body modification and a lot of tattooing and obviously, depending on where you are in the world, just being a Darkoon is a death sentence. And I loved the idea. In that very, very first game that we played, we were a bunch of, I believe we were Imperial citizens, I think. And then there was one person at the table who was a plant. We didn't know that, but he was a plant. And he was a Darkoon. And halfway through our big fight at the end, we had that moment of, oh, and by the way, ha-ha! And because the GM at the time did such a good job of setting up this, everybody around, you can't trust anybody except for your people right now. You can trust everyone by you. You've been adventuring for several months. You know each other really, really well. And that guy, that baker, he might be wrong. The butcher, definitely, he's got too many knives. He did such a great job of everybody outside the circle. They are all a possible threat. And then the actual threat was literally the guy sitting next to us. And I think that kind of that sort of elevated tension and danger the world represents in such a great way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's an interesting one because most RPGs, when you generate a character, you're there you pour your heart and soul into fleshing out the character, give them backstory. You want them to develop, to grow with their story, develop the narrative, build the whole path of their story ahead of them, and you want them to progress. Darkens are completely the antithesis of that, and that's what I really love about that, because it's like throwing a massive spanner in the works where suddenly you have players who really don't care. They're only interested in renown for their faction or their cult, not their own renown, because renown is the core mechanic. This, as you mentioned, the well-equipped knight, will stand out like a sore thumb. And that's a lot of fun as well, role-playing that. But I think it's an interesting one because as a GM, some of the core themes I like to throw into games, I love red herrings. I love double-edged swords, wild goose chases, all these terms. The whole kind of Thargos setting is just full of them. It's knowing which the less of two bad decisions to make, less of two evils. There's never really perfect decisions you make.
Yeah.
You're trying to, and there's always a fallout. You mentioned you do this, but this happens. That's happening all the time. You're constantly looking at that. And because we have, over the course of the setting, and it has now been fleshed out even more in third edition, is we have over 100 factions, orders, guilds, cults, knight orders, druid gatherings, noble families. So those over 100 different entities in the game world, they all have their own codes of honor, their own rules, their own alliances, enemies, and so on. So that tapestry you have in the background, as a GM, as a player, you can tap into that, you can enrich the experience, or you can say, you know what? I'm a renegade. I want to operate in the shadows. I'm not going to get involved in that big, powerful political power play stuff. I'm going to keep a really low profile. So as a gamer, you can decide to be the sore thumb character because it's a really good kind of magnet for attracting problems. But that actually helps you as a party, for example, as the knight to attract those issues, those enemy attacks and so on, whilst the rest of the party does some other cool, very useful stuff. So you can really play on the mechanics of the renown, the interaction of the different factions and orders, and it's all there. It's all mapped out. It's explained. That, and you can dip into it as a GM as much or as little as you want. As nothing's imposed on anybody, and that's something an important thing. We worked on third edition was in second edition. A lot of gamers love the crunch, but actually, RPGs have moved on a hell of a lot, and I'm fully aware of how things have. Rules are a lot simpler, a lot more straightforward, and there's a lot more narrative play and role play and almost free form in some cases. So we really set out to kind of keep the gritty vibe, the kind of complexity of the setting and the tapestry, but simplifying the rules tremendously. But then we added some additional mechanics like the tension die. So things that where you literally using a D6, you can reflect the tension around the room. And I found amazing role-playing moments where the GM would set the tension die range from 1 to 6, 6 being the highest level of tension. But at 3, for example, you had this room and the GM would put the die at 3, and actually to see a player say, actually, you know what? For me, it's gone up to a 4. And you actually have players role-play, increase the tension in the room, and the rest of the team say, what the heck are you doing? You just had an impact on our dice rolls now. You do realize we're going to fail more. Yeah, but guys, the tension's there. My character's freaking out. And I love that from a role-playing experience point of view. It's a really simple mechanic, but it's a really fantastic way just to kind of emphasize things, to put things into perspective, to get these reference points for role-playing. And I think that's a big part of what we're trying to do. So, yeah, the Darkens, big spanner in the works, shakes things up. Obviously, I'm glad you like them. We still love them. But they are just yet one of those other facets of the game.
One of my favorite, I won't even call it a piece of art. It's a diagram from the Darkened book, was all the various cults and how they interacted with each other. Yes. Do this one like this one? Does this one hate this one? Do these guys even care? I thought that was such a neat, especially because graphically, for the people who haven't seen it, obviously, it was a bunch of the symbols, the different cult symbols, and they were of different sizes based off of how big that cult is. Is it super widespread? Is it tiny? So at a glance, I could know these 3 are the major players and here are the little ones. But the way it was laid out was kind of random and I don't want to say erratic, but it had a feel to it. You could look at it and go, "Oh man, these guys do not have it together." And it was such a cool concept of this entity, this kind of anti-imperial push from all of this stuff that I could look at my players, because I ran it for quite a while. I could look at my players and go, show them that diagram, and they would immediately get the feel of, oof, okay, yeah, all right. If these guys got it together, they would be seriously terrifying.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
and there comes that risk versus reward. A single Darkun is really scary.
Yeah.
But the idea of an entire coordinated effort of them is nightmare fuel.
Absolutely.
And I love that in a single image, I was able to look at that and understand it immediately. And it is there was so much to how you put together your world and how you put together those other books that I'm sure the same kind of care and love is going into the new ones, if not more so. Your children have gotten older, so to speak.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep.
And I can't wait to see. So full disclosure, I have been, because I've been so slammed, I've wanted to help Chris with 3rd edition. I've wanted to help get involved again. And you guys have been following me and listened to me. Life has been nuts. And I still, obviously, I want to get back into it at some point. But I am so unbelievably proud of what you've done over the last, at this point, 21 years. And I can't wait to see where that has gone. If obviously I could be like, what's different? But it doesn't help the people who haven't played 2nd edition. So rather than saying that, do you have the tension die is not something that it didn't exist before. This is new. Is there anything else that you want to shine a spotlight on, specifically when it comes to cursor? We'll talk more about other cool SBG stuff here in a minute, but only because I've got a personal love and stake for the Cursed Empire aspects of things. I want to know more about 3rd edition. I want to know more what's what is going to happen with this.
That's very cool. Thanks for that. One of the key things I mentioned earlier on was really some simplification of the mechanics. We had some of the criticism we had on 2nd edition, and there was some, which we took on board, was love the system. Love the setting, love the background, love the world, the richness of the game world, but the mechanics are quite crunchy. It's kind of managing. I find it a bit tricky in my gaming group. Can you not have more simpler rules? So what we did in terms of combat, we have simplified combat. It's still dangerous. It's still gritty, but we even have rules you can mix and match. There's ultra light combat rules, so you can accelerate some of the gameplay between maybe 2 non-player characters, for example. And then you can then slow down and go to the more expanded combat rules. But even the more expanded combat rules are far, far simpler than the original 2nd edition. So combat's been simplified and accelerated. In terms of magic, now this is another one. This has been a very interesting one in our kind of design team on 3rd edition. And there's been different kind of schools of thought around this. But we also looked to kind of simplify magic to some degree. But when it came full circle, one of the biggest strengths of Cursed Empire was that option to design your own spells.
The runic magic system was
huge.
Gorgeous.
It was huge. Yeah, it was huge, and we're keeping that in. We've improved it considerably. We've simplified the number of runes. We've fine-tuned. We double-checked some of the rune grammar. There were a few good glitches, some things that we need to fix, but that's been really fixed now. And equally now, the idea is we have that optional rune deck before. That's going to become a more integral part for spellcasters who want to use that. But once again, it is a core rule set, but you can, as a GM, say, you know what? I'm going to stick to spell lists. I don't want to open up this whole this spell creation thing. It's not the taste of my gaming group.
Yeah.
So be it. But it was such a key part of the original kind of game mechanic, which really gave spellcasters that power to design their own spells. It also added value to magic objects and spell books and so on, because you actually could find new spells that didn't exist before, things like that, and actually understand how they're constructed to do your own derivative versions of them. But basically, we kept it in, but we found a way of kind of compromising between the simplification and those who loved it and still want to have access to that. So that's a big part of it as well. Very cool. Otherwise, in terms of another big change, once again, simplification as well. We originally had a bunch of core attributes for the character. We're down to 3 now. We just have might, mind, and mysticism. That's a big change.
Yeah.
That's a big. Before, I think we had on 10, 11, 12 or something. And now really you just have 3 catch-alls. You have might, which encompasses your kind of dexterity or agility, constitution. And then you have mind, so it's your intellect, your spirit, your wisdom, and so on. And then you have mysticism, which is more spiritual and magical kind of.
Wow. So that's actually a pretty huge. Not even just a diversion from the older version of the game. That's a lot of systems at least have like 6 or 7 normal kind of key attributes to divide things out. Having 3, that's
yeah.
I mean, it does. I think it lends itself well to the Cursed Empire as a setting is about over the top. You don't have very many people who are just normal, boring. If they're going to be a player character, they're probably something special, and they probably are an embodiment of something special. So that makes sense that if you are a physicality based, if your something special is muscles and beefiness, then you probably have all of those things more or less wrapped into one thing, and that's going to be your height. So I get that. That's cool. I'll be interested to see how that pans out. Now, does that mean also, is it the same way for all your like encounter based monster, or not monsters, but you know what I mean? The encounters based on the stats as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool.
It's absolutely that. But the interesting thing is also there's two other dimensions to this. You have the renown, obviously, which is key. The renown is a big part of this, and it's even been strengthened in 3rd edition, and then sanity points. So that kind of gives you a fully fleshed out, multifaceted character. And also another key thing in the character generation steps you have. So the choice of the race of character, you then have where you were born, your upbringing. So the upbringing you had, whether you were a protected upbringing or just left to your own devices, maybe you're a street urchin, the environment you grew up. So the kind of physical environment, was it mountainous? Was it coastal? Some of that was in 2nd edition, but we kind of emphasize that a bit more. And we've also fleshed out this notion of story path. And I really, really love that in terms of, we have like a graph that's explained in the book where you show all the years preceding year dot or year 0 when you actually start playing that character, all the events that character's experienced, good and bad, and how it's impacted them negatively, positively. Maybe that also explains how some of them have sworn enemies. So you get this really cool backstory you can flesh out as much as you like. But once again, it's a la carte, to use that term. You can choose to really delve deep into this stuff with your gaming group. If you want to do a quick one-shot, we also have a rapid character generation mechanic, which you can knock up a character really, really fast. Good for pre-gens or good for one-shots. So the idea is that we provide the kind of setting framework. We provide a toolkit, a sandbox, a toolkit for GMs and gaming groups to kind of pick and choose the pieces they want. They want to emphasize high kind of level magic and a lot of spell creation and really in-depth kind of spell creation. And it's a big part of their campaign. They can really emphasize that. If they want quick and dirty fighting and combat that's really done really fast, they can. So that was really the idea. Let's provide this really cool toolkit and people do what they want with it. Because for us, we've always had this. I know it sounds a bit cliche, but it very much is how the core team GM games. The rules are there to help tell a cool story. Yeah. It's all about narrative. It's all about the characters. It's all about their experiences, their interaction, what they've experienced, what they've seen, what they've learned. That's the biggest part, which is why renown is a really important part of the game. You can be, I always use this analogy, but you could be a 16-year-old farm boy with a pitchfork and you slay that lone wolf in the village that's been killing the local lambs of the farmer. You are the village hero. You are a hero. It's relative. Yeah. You're a battle-hardened Crimson Knight with 30 years of war veteran, and you do that for breakfast, no one would bat an eyelid.
Yeah.
So it's all about what you've experienced, and having those kind of references of renown. It's a very cool mechanic to kind of determine where you fit in society. Are you known locally? Are you known across the seas? Are you a heroic character? And that, as you highlighted, you're absolutely right. It's a double-edged sword, and you can play with that to your heart's content.
That is fantastic. I cannot say this enough. I am super excited to see how this comes out, how this pans out completely and starts to. Now you've got a couple of US shows coming up.
Yep. Yeah, we got a Gamma actually next week. End of next week we're flying for the US, and then we're at Gen Con again.
Awesome.
Which will be cool in August. I'm looking forward to that. And we're thinking about Origins, maybe, we'll see. But definitely next year again, we'll be back at the US conventions. And we're doing touring Europe. Actually this week we're in Cannes, the biggest French-speaking gaming convention in the world. That's this week. And then we're on UK Game Expo. We're going to be at Essen, doing a bunch of shows really. So in all the big kind of gaming conventions around Europe as well, and getting the word out there. And of course, this whole range, and we're going to be releasing. You've got to find this. There's a catalog now we're going to be releasing, which is a pretty awesome catalog with the whole game range. So you got there's all the miniatures in there. There's some of the cool artwork. You have there's the card games that are out, which of course you know about, Brian, because you were kind of behind one of the game engines of one of the card games, the Heroes of Thargos card game. There's also Battle Mage is out. There's Undead expansion goes to the card game. There's another card game coming out.
That's great.
The RPG. There's just a bunch of cool stuff. And the idea was that we want retailers, game stores, and gamers to kind of build these. There's some pretty cool minis as well. To kind of build around the IP, build communities around all this IP. We're working on dungeon crawlers. We've got a bunch of board games here. There's a bunch of really cool stuff coming out, being worked on. And the nice thing is, we've signed up a bunch of game creators, they're from different walks of life. They have different gaming tastes. So we got some guys ready to deck building, area control board games, Eurostar games, Ameritrash. Well, there's different obviously definition of these games, and we're bringing all these different competencies of people together that are getting all excited about the setting. They're using that setting as a backdrop to draw from. And going back to something we discussed even before we did this call, I like to, in terms of game design, I often start from a piece of artwork. A piece of artwork, a short story, and then from that flow all the mechanics and how you actually then model certain things. And talking of modeling, we are absolutely stoked about this. This is going to be it's literally a robot that interacts with the board and board pieces, and we're going to be developing a boss fight game which will literally have real-time combat. You can scan the certain weapons. It will know where it's been attacked from, what it's been attacked by, who's been attacked by, and it will respond in accordance with that. And we can model the behavior of the robot and so on. So there's a bunch of really cool stuff going on as part of SPG. But of course, the Cursed Empire is a big part of this in terms of the RPG itself, 3rd edition. And in terms of artwork, I've always been a stickler for artwork, for maps. I love maps. I got a real thing about maps. Once again, in terms of the scale of the world, it's a big chunk of Thargos here. And when we kind of zoom into the small cape that's here in the central continent, and you've seen this before, you'll know this before, but that's
I'm very familiar with that map. Yeah.
You helped with the Atlas, so yeah, you would know about that. And basically, we've done a whole bunch of new maps as well for the game, but even artwork, I think we're at something crazy like 300 pieces of artwork. I mean, it's completely insane. It really is. So yeah, it's just really, really a complete reboot on the artwork, the whole design, the layout. And once again, before we go to crowdfunding, what we're doing now is we're about almost 90% done in terms of layout. And we're heavily working now on the French translations. They'll be coming out in 2 languages for starters, French and English. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff going on. So
that's fantastic. What kind of time frame are you looking at for rough estimate? Obviously, if you don't have a legitimate date out there yet, for people to start being able to. I mean, obviously they can sign up now and get on the mailing list and whatnot. Which, by the way, I will put that in the description. So everyone who's watching this, click on that and at least get your name in there so you can follow. When are you thinking about that's actually you're gonna hit the big green button?
I mean, it's going to be sometime in Q2, so before this summer. Before this summer, we were hoping April, May, so it's not far off at all.
I was going to say it's real close. Then that's awesome.
It's not far off at all, and the good thing is we'll be in a good position to also deliver the pledges pretty rapidly. It'll be this year as well, so we're going to be in a good position. That'll be a fast turn. Excuse me. Because the stuff is come together. It's a lot of it's already pretty much there. So just a case of manufacturing and doing final proofing, final editing. But it's progressing really well. We're really, it's a tricky one because when there's so many really cool games out there and really good games coming out. A lot of new independent games coming out as well. We've been looking around. We're looking at other games that are out there. But it's kind of, for us, it's about we kind of come full circle. And hopefully we can get the original fans of the game excited, but bring a lot of new fans. The other thing is, we're also, as part of the crowdfunding, there will be a 5th edition, D&D 5th edition game mechanic companion. There'll be an add-on book, a bolt-on book. So 5th edition gamers who are used to, obviously, that game mechanic and game system will be able to drop straight into Cursed Empire, straight in, no transition, straight into it, and even a bunch of GM tips on how to kind of create that Cursed Empire vibe for people coming from a different viewpoint. And also, it's been a lot of fun trying to find 5th edition game mechanics that still match the deadliness of the Darkens, still bring the magic elements in as well. Renown is going to be, it'll still sit as a separate game mechanic, which will just piggyback on the back of 5th edition because they are compatible. It just kind of, it's a kind of good guide to how you manage PN and non-player characters and so on, and player interaction. So a lot of the stuff will be usable. Talking of usable, we're going to be releasing a free PDF which converts, and this is a really important one for me, which converts every single non-player character of second edition. So all the second edition books people have are fully compatible, fully usable in third edition. That was a really important thing for me because that's a big thank you guys for supporting those early editions. It's not like, oh, it sits on the shelf, it gathers dust. All that lore is absolutely valid for all those books in terms of lore, setting, short stories. And all the non-player characters, every single one of them has a conversion, has a stat block.
I was going to ask if the PDF is just a here's how to do it yourself, or it's actually here's their new stats for the new system.
That's a new stat block done.
That's awesome. That is fantastic. That had to be a hell of a lot of work.
Yeah, it wasn't me. It was for someone on a long weekends. And it's close to 200 NPCs. So
I was going to say since some of you haven't seen the second edition books, they were amazing, and I say that utterly biased. But they had so many little people, because again, in a more dangerous setting, a barmaid with a knife can be really scary. And so a lot of these NPCs, unlike, in a regular D&D game or something where sometimes the cast of thousands can be kind of sort of brushed over, I don't need I don't need stats for a level 0 commoner. They've got 1 hit point. If I bop them, they're done. In Cursed Empire, literally, again, we come down to the fact that you don't necessarily trust everybody around you. Someone could be that secret assassin, and that means that there were a ton of people to interact with in those books. So the fact that you've already adapted those, and that's going to be now you said it's going to be just a free PDF for the people who have the old books.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess technically a free PDF for everybody, but obviously leaned towards the people who had those old books. But that's a huge undertaking, and if someone doesn't appreciate that, if no one else tells you that this is an appreciated amount of work, it's coming from me. That is an insane amount of additional love that you've put into this conversion. So that's hands and above amazing.
I appreciate that, because it was just a decision from the outset. I thought we need to find a way of just recognizing the support. We wouldn't be doing what we're doing now. We didn't have that kind of early following and enthusiasm all those 20 years ago. We wouldn't be doing this. So got to give something back. You can't just, hey, come buy all the new stuff and all that old stuff. Yeah, just keep it in the bookshelf. No, pull it out, get it back, crack it open again, get this cool character, get those NPCs alive again, and get them breathing and get them fighting and doing stuff. So that was really important for me. Really, really important. And we're adding a raft more new stuff. Of course, there's a bunch of new things happening. It's just stacks of new material. Some gaming accessories as well. I want the details now because that'll come out in the kind of campaign.
Absolutely.
There's just a bunch of stuff we're working on. It's more than just a reboot. It really is something totally different. And once again, it's an interesting one because I tend to find some games, and it's not a criticism at all, try very, very hard to be something very, very, very different from what's come before. And what we're trying to do with third edition is to play on all the strengths that second edition had, because it had a bunch of strengths, and just try and improve where things needed improving and try and get better at certain things, but just less constraints and just a massive kind of sandbox to play in, just a really cool sandbox to play in. And even just showing just one kind of example, the kind of level you talk about workload, the crazy level of detail we have. If you look at, for example, some of the item illustrations not some of them, all the item illustrations inside so for equipment and weapons, armor, etc., inside third edition, they are actually taken from the 3D renders of the miniatures. So, So if you actually have your miniature, or you have a creature or some citadel guard you slay, and you take the loot, for example, you can actually see that exactly the same matching levels of detail of the gear that person's walking around on the miniature. So if you want immersion, it's not even street level, it's sword level. It's kind of crazy.
So I did one before the final question. Well, I have one good question, and this is more of a just kind of an in general thing. There have been lots of times where people have put out other editions, new editions of. You mentioned that there's some games that are pretty much a right hand turn from their old rules or whatnot, And a lot of times, most recently, we've seen things like the new Planescape book and the Dragonlance book that it picks up the story, and it kind of, some time has passed, that sort of thing. WotC just announced the Ruin of Vecna, where it's a big adventure arc that is Vecna's returned and trying to kill the multiverse and do Vecna things. Does third edition encompass all the old history and just kind of says, you can play whenever you want, or have you moved the story along? Has the chronology moved forward?
It's a really good question. It is where it was.
Okay.
What I'm really excited about is, so that's why all the past stuff is fully compatible and up to date and current. It picks up exactly where the other one left off. But the really exciting thing, and that's what I've been so excited about, is actually it's going to take people to a totally different level of the story arc and what was happening in the background. All the massive spoilers, a bunch of stuff there out there that's not available, not in the public domain at all. But I want to take this to a totally different level. Find out what the hell's going on in Cursed Empire and what can be done. Can the Empire be saved? What's been happening in the background? And we're going to take gamers to a totally different level they're going to see some really cool stuff. I mean, they're going to go to different regions they've never been to before. There's a brand new bunch of, in terms of bestiary, different climates, different environments. We never had jungles or deserts before. There's a bunch of other stuff, but it all ties together. It's not about just rehashing. Let's change the weather in a different environment, in a different region. It's going to tie together with the story. Why they're even going there? Well, there's a very good reason why they're going there in terms of the story arc. But yeah, it's literally picking up where people last put their character sheet down. They can just open those old books, get the new stuff, hopefully, and just continue playing and building on what they did in the past and taking things to a totally different level. Some of the outer continents, some of the outer regions. Talking of which, I'll just put it out there, but we're always looking for new talent. So if people want to have fun and help develop some of those outer regions, there's just throw it out there. There's just really, really cool stuff to kind of get involved in. And we're looking for new talent in those areas to help flesh out new regions, maybe new civilizations, some other stuff, some of the ancient stuff as well. Go back in time a little bit and look at some of the origins of. So yeah, but yeah, that was a very long-winded response to your question. But yeah, I've thought about this, and I just wanted to not just move the timeline along, but go back to where it was in the conflict, that massive civil war with the old empire and the force of the South, Karnakos, and their enemies, and just pick up from where people stop playing, maybe before they stop playing, and just continue that story arc. And there's a bunch of really cool stories to tell, hopefully with the help of a lot of gamers and MTs, Masters of Tales.
That is a great answer. Long-winded or no, that was a great answer. Because I'm always worried about when old worlds return to the table that they put such a huge gap or something, like generations have passed, and it does mean that you've got to kind of relearn the world. And I'm glad that you are picking up that baton and continuing it forward, but still you can still, the chronology is still there. If I wanted to play a slightly older game, it's still there, and that's awesome. My hat's off to you. Not for long, because my hair is crazy. One last question, as I try to end any of these interviews. We are running to the end of the time that I have allotted for this. Is if you have one, and I gotta keep you to one. If you have one thing that you want to tell all of the nerdites, nerd farm, whatever my fans are called, whatever people who watch this about, collectively, we'll say SPG collectively, just what you've got going on forward. When they click on that link that I put in the description to go to your website and stuff, what is it that you would like to leave them with, to say, this is what you have got, your flag in your hand, what you want them to kind of really keep their eyes out for?
One thing.
One thing. I know.
We go dilemmas again. I had two pop up immediately. Trying to contain the two. Through what we're doing with Cursed Empire, because really it is a kind of what we're putting forward at the moment. There's a lot of things SPG will be doing, but we want to rekindle with an older generation of gamers those feelings they had when they first started role playing. Combine that with new blood to the game, to the hobby. We're all about getting new gamers on board, and we're just so excited for people to experience the setting who are completely fresh to role playing, completely fresh to the setting, but equally for those who have had those experiences in years gone by, they think, wow, here we go again. This feels familiar. I've seen this kind of thing before. So we want to try and recreate that fun, that excitement, the kind of epic thrill, the tension through our games, through the game range. And that's really this notion of ecosystem of games. I'll kind of end on that. That's the one big thing. We're building an ecosystem of games. And my dream as a GM all those years ago was to say, okay, we're going to role play this epic sea battle. But actually, the game mechanics don't really allow for it. And but wait a minute, there's a card game called War Gallows of Thargos. So we're going to play that. And that's going to last 2 hours. And there's been an epic sea battle. There's warships, there's pirates and sea monsters and all the cool stuff you want in those kind of games. And depending on the outcome of that, it's going to impact your RPG campaign. It was my dream to have a toolkit of different games where I could resolve certain campaign things. So that in the background, there's that RPG side of things. Using board games, you can make an epic gaming weekend. You could have completed 4 epic battles and changed the course of history over a gaming weekend. All of us are strapped for time. Time is precious. We all know that. And space is precious at home as well. So the idea you have interchangeable assets and you can reuse some of the stuff across a different game range, but you can also fast track epic stories is a big thing for me. That's a really big thing. So we had that Guilds of Kernor board game. I know this is one thing you asked, so it's still one thing. It's
all one collective thing.
That's it. But we have this really cool game called Guilds of Kernor, designed by Gene Shipman. He'll be with me at Gamma next week.
Yep.
And basically, it's a worker placement / deck builder where you control a guildmaster from Kernor and you play out basically the guild's influence, and you develop that and you win the game if you have the most influence. But you're also playing on either the Empire side and the Darkens or the Southerners. So it's a really, really fine edge. But I would take that board game and I would say, guys, you've role played until this big thing happening in Kernor. Now put your character sheets to one side. Let's get out Guilds of Kernor. We're going to play a 2-hour, pretty, expert level board game. And based on the outcome, that's going to shape the course of the history. I love that.
That's cool.
I love that. And that's what we're doing with the ecosystem of games.
I think you got around the one thing by making one thing all the things. I think that works. I think that works out just fine, which is a perfect way to sign off. Obviously, I'm going to put your website and stuff in the description of the video. But if somebody wanted to reach out to you directly, and like right now their pen is in hand and they're like, I want to reach out, where would they find you? Basically, my direct email, which is contact@sbgeditions.com, and that's it. Drop me a line or on Facebook, on our Facebook groups, through Messenger. But basically, that email leads straight to me, and I'm really glad to hear from anybody who wants to get in contact to see how much they want to get involved. There's so much to do. If anybody is nervous and wants the introduction, hit me up, and I will make that happen. I will gladly facilitate. Very cool. That's very cool. So, for those of you who are watching, you'll see me probably in a different shirt, maybe here in a second, because I record the outro later. But I'll be right with you. To you, Chris, thank you so much for being on and giving us a look at SBG and Cursed Empire and some of the cool stuff you got going on. Obviously, we'll have you back on later on, and I will tell everyone a bit about the Kickstarter when it goes live, and we're gonna make a thing out of this. And I'm still gonna do my best to make some room in the schedule for Cursed Empires, because I do love it so much. I can't abandon my old babies. So thank you so much, and thank you, Ron. For everybody at home or on your phone or your iPad or whatever you're watching this on, your smartwatch, if this is the future enough, I don't know. Regardless, I'll see you in just a minute.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Bryan.
And here we go. So that was awesome. I had a ton of fun talking to Chris. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was informative. Sometimes it's cool just to see how the sausage is made, so to speak, and to see how like excited people can be about their individual products, their projects, their creations, their little published babies. It really was just a pleasure to talk to Chris and catch up. You know, I'm very fortunate that here in like a week I get to see him at Gamma, and then again in a month or two we'll get to see him later at some of the shows. So I'm excited just to get to hang out with him a little bit, and who knows, maybe if there's a way to work some of his stuff into my schedule, I can, you know, get my fingertips into some Cursed Empire again, because I do definitely, I love that world, and the stuff when I kind of fell away from being able to freelance at that time, I had some really cool stuff cooking, sadly on a laptop that no longer exists, so I can't go back and find any of that information, because wow, that would be awesome. But I might have notes around here somewhere. Who knows? Maybe an old hard drive laying around. But either way, I'm hoping to be able to maybe bring some of that to third edition as well, if I'm allowed, and B, if I have the bandwidth to do so. Obviously, you know, I know you guys worry about me that I overwork, but it will be really cool to see that come together. And that Kickstarter, he said, was just going to be in a couple of months. So more on that as things progress. But yeah, I think just, you know, head over to his website, follow him on Facebook, you know, do all the click and follows and subscribes and all that kind of stuff for more information. And I think it's going to be fun to see, even if you just like cool art, go over there and take a look at you know, some of those cool, you know, different art pieces that he's got created for. You said something like over 300 art pieces for the third edition book. Definitely worth checking out how that is all put together. But until then, you know, just be safe, wash your hands, wear a mask if you have to. And you know, don't be a jerk. Try and be positive. Try and leave every room a little happier than when you got there. And you know, hug your loved ones. Tell them that that they matter, because they do, and they should know that. Maybe even do so while you're playing some games. We'll see you next week.